Hi, hello everyone. Hello to those that are on the call, and hello to all those that are watching on stream. I'm CycleHexane, and today, for 2 hours, I'll be showing off what I do in After Effects to make high videos, and we're gonna look at the VGLX high video precisely, see basically what goes into making a video like this, and just going into detail of every scene, and yeah, and detailing how I make this stuff. So the first thing I want to go into is this is the first thing that I do whenever I make a high video. And this decides basically the layout of the video is going to be the music. So for VGLX, I chose Game by S Don. The best way to introduce it to you, I think, is going to be to just watch the video. Just gonna watch the high video once. You've probably already seen it, but we'll rewatch it together. I took day 5 because I made some corrections along the way, but yeah, we're gonna look at what it looks like, and then I'll talk about it at greater length afterwards.
Stand by.
Alright. So obviously the music is really important because it's gonna dictate the outline of your video. Whenever I choose my song, I want to make sure that I can have something that's interesting musically, something that people haven't necessarily heard 1,000 times before, and just overall something that people will enjoy. And also there's the whole team reel thing. I always have to think about, okay, is the song that I'm picking, is it gonna work well to have a team reel with this? I have 48 teams to match. I have to sync them to the music. So there's lots of things that I have to keep in mind. And usually I'll take songs that I know, but I'll make some edits. You can see them here, the files in game edit. I do some edits not in After Effects. I do them in GarageBand on my iPad. It's nothing major. It's just looping some stuff, shuffling some parts of the song around to my liking. So it's nothing much, but it is an important part, because if the song's shit, then the video is gonna be shit. So you have to keep that in mind. But I'm going to talk about the actual video making process more than the music, because that's what really is I feel is interesting. So the first thing coming into this video is first off the VGL logo, the pixelized VGL logo. Press start, VGLX, and the background, and they all come in at very specific times to match the music. So if we listen to the start of the Hive video again, you can see that it's all perfectly synced, and I also have the logo with a bit of a little animation. We can look at it in detail if I go to. Oh yeah, this is the one. This is the one right there. Player. Yeah, there we go. VGLX. So the first thing I should go over is what goes on with this, because this is just the VGL logo. I haven't, obviously it's pixelized, but I haven't done anything fancy to it. If I take off the effects, which you can see over here, they're also here. But you can see here there's a bunch of effects. You can see this is highlighted. So if I turn all of this off, you can see it's just a regular logo, right? So what Mosaic does, what it basically says, is just pixelizes the logo, and you can choose how pixelized you want it. Whatever, I've got it set at 70 on both horizontal and vertical, just to make kind of a video game effect. And then here, CC light sweep. Now I used this during the logo animation. Okay, I wanted something kind of reminiscent of a coin in Super Mario Brothers, so I have it kind of jumping like that, kind of like when you pick up a coin from a block, and then it has this light sweep coming across it. You can see here, if I make this a bit more, there we go. So these are keyframes. Right there, you can see that I have a keyframe here and a keyframe there, and basically I'm shifting the position of that effect so that it sweeps across the logo, and I have it set so that it happens right after the coin kind of jumps. So it does a kind of a little neat animation. Whoops, that's the wrong window. That's also the wrong window though. I'll mess with that later. There we go, that's the right window. So if I replay it again, it's all very brief, but it does kind of makes a neat little animation to introduce the video. Alright, do I have anything else? Well, obviously I gotta stay on this scene right there, because I have the project, you'll notice, is divided in a bunch of different stuff, and they're all separate scenes. I divide them by two ways. One of them is just what part of the video I'm working on, and the other is if shit starts getting, like, for example, here there's a lot of garbage. There's just a lot of items laying around, and I probably could have made separate compositions to fit them into, just so it looks less cluttered. But when I did this project VGLX, I was still kind of bumbling around in After Effects, so I wasn't nearly as used to it as I am now. Anyway, we get in, we get this background, we get the animation, and then there's some stuff that starts happening. The first thing I want to point out is the shape layer is basically the background quarter circles you see. There's a few things to them. I mean, you can see right now there's a lot of shit on your screen, but we'll look at it one by one. First thing we can see, well, this is just stroke, ellipse path. This stuff is just dictating how what the shape layer looks like. For example, if I turn off stroke, then you can't see anything, and if I turn on fill, then yeah, there you go. You can see that the path is actually these are actually just circles, but I have the fill set to nothing, so the circle is basically empty, and I have a stroke of some width and some color. Here it's white, and I have something called a miter limit, which makes it so it's only part of the outline that is shown. For example, if I change this value, I could change this value and it would make, you see, a lot more. Yes, the load, because obviously this is pretty heavy since it's all over the screen, but so yeah, but yeah, it would change. You have it to 4.0, which means one full line, one empty line, one full line, one empty line. But the more you have, the more you increase this limit, then the more strokes you'll get. So it's basically how I've got that set up, and I've got some animations going on also. The first thing I should point out though before that is the repeaters. So repeaters are really important. I work with them a lot of the time, and I probably shouldn't. I probably shouldn't work with them as much as I do, just because they make the video like crazy when I'm rendering it, just because it takes so much processing power. You'll see what I mean once I take them off. Exactly. Now you can't see anything. This is because when I have this layer, let me turn one of them on. When I make this layer, originally it's only one circle that's being made. Obviously, it's not all these circles that you can see on your screen. To make those happen, you have to make repeaters. And this repeater, basically what it does is it takes the original shape that I've created, and then it repeats it on the x-axis. So you can see I have 100 copies, and then it's offset at -10. If I change the offset to like 5, you can see it starts here. I bring it back to -10. There you go. And then you don't notice that it starts all the way back there because that's off screen. So it makes 100 copies just on this axis going to the right. And then I have a second repeater on the y-axis, and basically this is a bit tricky to understand at first, but what this repeater does is that it takes all the copies that repeater 1 has created, so every single copy that's on this x-axis, and then it puts them on the y-axis. So for example, if I turn this off, then you can see that there's only a line. You can't really see it because it's behind all this stuff, but it would be the same way. It would be just like repeater 1 on its own, except it would be vertical instead of horizontal. So when you activate both, you get a full grid like this. And once again, I have 100 copies and an offset of something. It's just basically I want to cover the whole screen with it. And this is the best way to do it. It certainly beats building a grid and then copy pasting one shape over and over and over. It just gets really unmanageable at that point. Your project will be just fucking unreadable. So they're pretty useful. You can only use them with shapes, unfortunately. If you could use them with images, it would be a lot easier on me sometimes, but this is pretty useful. What's next? Yeah, there's something I didn't cover with this layer just yet, and it's animated. So the first thing that I can see, whenever you see those dots on the timeline, basically shows keyframes. So I've got an animation going on here. I go into it. There you go. It's in transform, and I've got a rotation set up, so you can see there's a bunch of keyframes all around. And what I'm doing with this, with these rotations, is that I'm basically turning these quarter circles 90 degree. So if I play the footage, you'll be able to see they spin around kind of. Computer's kind of rendering the video as I go. That's kind of annoying with After Effects. You can't really get a smooth. You can't really get a smooth preview going unless you pre-render. But you can see if I drag my cursor around that every now and then it kind of rotates a little bit. And that's kind of like some background action that you can have just to help make the background a bit more alive. Because if it was just this color and then nothing else, it would be a bit dull. Do I have anything else? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think I have another. Yeah, let me see. Oh yeah, right. I kind of move it around later on. I'll talk about when we get there. It's nothing major. It's just that this is I have a bunch of icons over there. Most of them don't really matter, but the two on the right, so the one with the circles and the one with the cube, are kind of important. These won't often come into play because I don't tend to use that too much. But the ones with the cube, there are 3D layers, which basically means, well, you can move them in 3D. And if I move the timeline ahead, you can see that the background kind of shifts on a perspective, and that's what you can do with 3D layers. If I turn these off, you can see it stays in place. If I turn them back on, then I've lost my modifications, but whatever. I can just do that. There you go. So, that's all for the background, at least for this first part. But as you can see already, there's a lot that goes into this. This text, nothing much to it. It's just I looked up some fonts, something that would look kind of something you'd see on an old video game to match with the pixelized logo. And I've got, let's see, it's, VGL, yeah, there we go, VGLX, for example, we'll take that. And it's got 2 drop shadows, so this is pretty simple stuff. If I turn them off, you'll see even better. There you go. It's just drop shadow at 100%, so it looks like it's basically a copy of the text I have below it in a different color. And then a second one just to make it stand out even more. And then the text on the bottom is the exact same. Alright, so briefly before I move on to the GIFs on the sides, I want to talk about very briefly this text, which if I move the timeline around, it kind of appears and disappears. Pretty easy stuff. Again, this is just animation work, but very basic crap. So I've got an opacity timeline here, and I've got several keyframes. And basically what I do is I turn the opacity at 100, from 0 to 100% on and off. And I've got it set up. I'll show you in the graph editor. Let's see, yeah, this is value graph. So normally, if I didn't change anything, it would just fade out progressively, which wouldn't really achieve the effect I've got going. I think I can do it if I... Yeah, there we go. If I left it, this is usually what you'd get whenever you are you make a keyframe. It gradually goes from the value of the first keyframe to the value of the second. So it would gradually fade out like this. But that's not what I wanted. So I had it set up so it would instantly fade out and fade back in. So that's just something a little interesting. You'll see me go around the graph editor quite a bit, just because you can do so much with it. Whenever I move stuff around, change the opacity, stuff like that, I'm usually working with the graph editor, just because it's so useful to achieve different effects. And I look at some more text before. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. I've got, the organizer shows up from off screen. Very brief animation there, goes from some value in X, which is off screen, and then comes in, and then leaves in the same direction. So that's pretty standard stuff. And then to make it kind of blurry like this, you want to add some motion blur. You basically turn this off. It enables motion blur for all layers, and you want to make sure that the layer you're working on, so it's these two in that instance, have this little icon with the 3 circles ticked in. If I tick it off, you'll see that actually I could have, yeah, there we go. If I put it here, you can see that there's no blur anymore. If I turn it back on, there you go. So that's also very useful whenever you're moving stuff around. Usually you want to make sure that that you've got some motion blur going, just because it makes it smoother, makes it more pleasing to the eye. Alright, so I think that pretty much covers this intro part pretty well, aside from the GIFs. Now the GIFs, I wasn't too sure about how I handled this back in the day, and the answer is I handled this very poorly. So this is pretty scuffed. You can see there's a bunch of stuff and it's kind of laid all over the place, but I'll take some time to explain what exactly is going on here. We'll go into this first one here. So this used to be a GIF that I converted into a video. I did this in Photoshop. You can there's some way to do it. Some tutorials on online can tell you how. I really can't remember how I did it. I just remember I did it poorly. I should have asked for WebMs. The problem is this has keying, Meaning if I turn it off, you can see that there's is just a red background because GIFs don't have transparency. And that's a big problem because obviously if I leave this off, then yeah, that doesn't look too great. So I had to have some keying on there, and I couldn't really figure out to get a good way to key in webams, so I just asked for GIFs instead and then changed them to MP4s. But that was a really roundabout way of doing things. Now that I know how to work with webams, I would have been able to do it, but it's just back in the day I didn't know how. So I've got this keying right there, so just removes the background, and then the MP4 I've got set up pretty standard stuff. Comes into the screen. You can see starts from outside, goes inside, goes back out. So that's pretty standard. I don't think I even have motion blur on it. No, I don't. So just you set a position, it's off screen, keyframe, another keyframe in screen, it comes in, and then you repeat that to fade it back out. That's pretty standard stuff. And the way I have it animated is just set up in Photoshop, converted to an MP4, and then it just plays itself. And then I've got it's basically that way for a bunch of stuff. This is a bit different though. As you can see here, it's not a video; it's just a bunch of images. This is 64 images. It's basically a deconstructed GIF that's just been split into 64 images that just play successively. That's also something you can do in Photoshop, and it's very stupid the way I've done it. I don't recommend doing it this way. Again, this is just very scuffed stuff. I definitely wouldn't go with today. And again, this has some keying. If I turn it off, you can see it as a green background. And you can see this is not keyed very well because you can still see some green pixels here and there. And later on, I'll go into what I could have done to make it look better. And obviously, something I forgot to mention also is mosaic. There's a mosaic effect on every single one of these, just to make them match with the logo, just so it looks proper. So that's basically, and then I've applied kind of the same method to all the GIFs that I wanted to have. But I definitely could have done this a lot better, honestly. Here you can see there's a bunch of purple pixels, and again, if I turn off keying, you can see that the keying just it took out precisely one shade and then didn't really do much for the contours. And if I take off mosaic, you'll see, well, you don't really see it when I take off mosaic, so I guess that's kind of too bad, but whatever. There's one in particular, I think that the one for Team Fortress 2 looks really bad. Yeah, that looks really terrible. And there's ways to fix it. If I turn off this and this, well, there's ways to do this. First off, there's a better tool to key stuff out. If I go into there's an effects and presets window here. Basically, just a bunch of effects that you can make use of. If I type key stuff, we'll find key light. Key light is way better than the linear color key effect I've got set up. So if I drag it in, put it on, and I set the screen color as what I have set up. Now this looks really scuffed because then it turns this whole outfit green, but then you turn screen balance to 0 and it's back to normal. But that's the keying is not necessarily the problem here. The problem is the white outline looks really, really poor. But there's a way to change that in After Effects, and that is with Matte Choker. You drag that in, and you can see it just kind of squeezes the edges, and you can turn that up and on, and there you go. And now that it looks a little weird, it looks kind of like those filters on GBA, so it doesn't look too great, right? But then I turn on Mosaic, and it still looks weird. The reason for that is the effects are not layered properly. So if I drag a Mosaic all the way down, if I can, come on, man. I'll drag Matte Choker above. And now it looks proper, right? So that's how you do it. You'd use key light instead of this linear color key garbage, and then you'd apply a matte choker to get rid of the outline. It's pretty pretty well, it's not really standard stuff because I didn't know how to do it at the time, but it's stuff that you couldn't just make up if you didn't know that it was a thing. Matte choker is super useful. I made so much use out of it. I think I found out about it during the last hype video for VGLX 14, and it's been super useful for me. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the GIFs. Just the same stuff every time. Oh yeah, I should point out something else too. So I almost forgot about that. You'll see when I look at the GIFs themselves, you can see that there's only one, but on the final composition there's two of them. This is because I have two of these set in, and I have one. If I show, no, it's not position, it's scale, I believe. Yeah, one is 100 by 100, which is just normal scale, and one is minus 100 by 100. What it does is that it flips the layer horizontally. It flips it on the y-axis. So, for example, if I turn it back to 100, then you have the two of them are stacked. And for shits and giggles, I can even put it to minus 100 on the y-axis, and then it's flipped on this axis. So there you go. That's how you do that. It's pretty useful. Just saves you from doing a bunch of work. You just do the work with one GIF, and then just take your composition, duplicate it, and then change the scale, invert it on the horizontal axis, and then you don't have to do more work. A big thing in video editing is just how can I do what I want to do, requiring the least amount of effort possible? Because this takes hours, obviously. All of this shit just takes me weeks to do. So whenever I can, I try to optimize. This is pretty, you know, just goes along with different GIFs and the animations that I've set up, so nothing weird here. I've also, you may have noticed, I've got the logo kind of pulsating with the beat of the music. Obviously, you can't hear the music right now because I'm not playing it, but yeah, it's pulsating to the beat of the music again. Some more action, some more. Usually, I try to sync as much stuff with the music as I can, just because it works well. It keeps things dynamic. So I think that's pretty much it for this intro part. I can move it ahead a little bit. That goes on, and then you'll see after a while. I've talked about the 3D background just at length. I'm not gonna go too much into detail into 3D right now because 3D is really complicated and I barely even touch it. What I just do here is just let me see. I took these two layers and just changed the position a bit. I think we'll be able to see. Yeah, I just switched them on the y-axis just a tiny bit, just so it makes it so it looks like there's some camera movement going on, but it really isn't much. It's just like how you'd make a 2D object fade to and from the screen. It's just the same thing. It's just you're pivoting the camera. Just achieves the same effect, so it's not too much to talk about there. Anyway, so here there's a bit of a transition into a different slide, and this is something I used to use a lot a few years ago. It's just kind of a neat effect where you've got the same composition kind of comes from the off screen up and then goes down like this. And I have it repeated a few times. So if the screen will load, because this is pretty heavy stuff, but we can see it in the actual video, I think. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. If I put it, can I? Let's see. Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna turn this off because it's obnoxious. Yeah, you can see here if I play it slowly, I can play it even slower, I think. Yeah, there we go. You'll be able to see that this is just the same composition that I've got looping, and then switching to a different one as it accelerates. So the way that I've got this set up is again, this is just position keyframes. So I've got the initial position of my layer, which is this one. Let's see, this is the first one that moves. Yeah. So right now 640 by 360 just means the center. And then this one is weighting basically 720 pixels up, so minus 360. And then as I bring it in, you can see that it shifts down, right? And then I've also have it set up so it progressively goes faster and faster. And I'll be able to show this if I select these and then go into graph value. You can see here, yeah, this is speed graph. Okay, good. If I select one of them, like this one, for example, you can see that this curve it starts slow and then it accelerates. It's like an exponential, or is it exponential? Yeah, it is exponential. Yeah, it's an exponential curve. So starts slow and then gradually builds up speed until we get to the frame that we want. Right? So that's something you can do. Works pretty well. Let me see if I can show you actually. I centered this. So if I turn this little handle that I've got right there, basically allows you to influence how you want your curve to look like. So I've got it set at influence 100, and that's how you build kind of a exponential curve like that. But you could also want it the other way, or you could want you can basically influence however you want the speed of your animation to go. That's how you modify. You go into the graph editor and then you mess around with these handles. There's one on the right also. You can't really see it, but it can do some funky stuff. So that's how you do it. So again, I've got this this intro composition. I've got it layered 3 times so that it has to loop 3 times in. And then I do the same thing with the next composition, which is VGL Splash. I've got 3 of them, so I also has to cycle through 3 of these until we get to the actual one. So that's how that transition works. And if we look at it in real time, there we go. Look at it in real time. Comes in a few seconds there. There you go. It looks pretty neat. It's not necessarily done too well, because if you look frame by frame, you can see that here, for example, there's a bit of black space. So it's not done 100% well. Here, this slide overrides this one, or rather, this composition overrides this one. So I've not done this perfectly right, but it goes by so quick that you can't really notice unless you go frame by frame. There's a lot of stuff like that in my videos. Some of the stuff I do is pretty scuffed, but it goes by so quick that people don't notice. So VGL Splash is really short slide, and there's not too much going on in it, but I'll go through it regardless. First off is this background. That's probably the most interesting thing about it. I've got this called Ripple Diamond, and it's basically what I've done here is I've got a single color background. So you see if I turn it off, it turns black. So I've just set the color to whatever, something purple, because VGL logo. Now I've got this adjustment layer. What it does is it lightens the center part of the screen, darkens the edges. I use that a lot also. Gives a bit of a dramatic effect. And then this is kind of, again, this is not the best way to do this. There's probably better ways to do it, but I haven't really figured out how to do it. Because you can't really use repeaters to achieve this effect of I've got this this tiny diamond in the center. It's highlighted right here. If I see, can I? Yeah, there we go. You can barely see it because it's very dark, but I've got this little diamond right there, and I want increasingly larger diamonds. Actually, if I zoom in, if I go into the right frame, you'll be able to see it more clearly. Yeah, there we go. Now you can see the one that's in the center. If I turn this off and then turn this off, then now you can see it clearly. So what I wanted was to have this tiny diamond in the center, and then have it expand and have this rippling opacity effect You can see if I move it forward, it kind of looks neat like that. And that's how you can do it, but it's very annoying. You have to make separate layers. You can't really use repeaters, because repeaters, you can use repeaters when you want to do positional changes, and that works really well. But when you want to do something like making stuff bigger or smaller or stuff like that, repeaters suddenly become a lot more tricky to use. So I can use them for this. Instead, I just made 20 different layers with every time a bigger diamond, and just I made it so the space between each one was kind of regular, so it looked pretty okay. And then there's some animations to it also, obviously. There you go. If I turn this on, you can see, yeah, there you go. You can see that I have 3 keyframes. The first one, every single diamond starts at 10%, so that's why they're very transparent right now. And then I have this keyframe at 100%, so it just lights up suddenly and then fades out. If I focus on this one, well, I have to not have all of them selected. If I focus on this one, you'll be able to see more clearly. So this one right now is really dark, then it lights up and then fades out bit by bit. And I've got this set up for every single of my diamonds, but I've got them offset in time just a little bit, so that it gives this kind of rippling effect that gradually takes up the whole screen. So that's how you can do it. And then you can repeat this to have it cycle. You just take those 3 keyframes. I'll show you. You can take those keyframes. You Control C to copy, and then you move them forward. Paste that, and then bam, you've got it going again. But then you have to do the you'll have to do this for all keyframes, and it's not it's actually pretty quick if you set it up properly. If I reduce this, there we go, and then I go ahead and select all of them, copy, move forward a bit, paste. Oh, oops, that's not how I do it. Yeah, that's right. I have to select these bit by bit, I think. Or maybe I don't. Maybe you might not be able to just paste keyframes like that, because it's just gonna create new copies, but that doesn't really matter. Again, you can do it one by one. Doesn't really change anything. Again, copy, paste, bam, and then whatever diamond I've got selected will light up again. So that's all. That's why I've only done it once, just because this VGL splash screen is just so short that I only needed it to happen once. So I didn't need to bother myself with more of that. So that's why whenever you see these kind of screens, there's another one like that later on. They're only on very short screens, just because I didn't want to go through the bother of copy pasting these animations for every single of the diamonds and then later on hexagons. It just takes too much time. So that's basically it for this background. Then here, hang on, if I just can go back to this, there you go. Just gonna make this a bit easier to go through. Yeah, there we go. This is just the VGL logo, nothing fancy about it. I don't think it has anything. It's got some animation, just when I've got it set up to leave the screen eventually, but other than that, it just sits there. So nothing much to say about it. Then I've got this text that kind of comes in. Again, just positional stuff. I've got it set up kind of nicely though, so I kind of want to show that off. So this is in sync with the music. We can check it out very quickly. I turn the music on. Right. So that's how you can tell. So I've got it set up with the music. It just worked out nicely that way. I've got those 4 layers, and I wanted 2 of them, so these 2, to come in from the left into the right, like this. And obviously they're offset in time, but they have the same modification going on. And then I wanted these two coming from the right into the left. And again, they're offset. They're also offset to match with the music. And then they come in. They're all into the screen, and then I wanted to center all of them up. So that's what I do here. Got another bunch of keyframes set up. Makes it so everything is nice and to the center. And then this doesn't show for long because again I have to sync with the music, and I get onto the next screen. So this only shows on screen for very briefly. So that's why the animation is so simple. And then what I do here to introduce this is kind of a transitional effect to introduce the next composition is let's see, it should be on this. Yes. So I've got something called a mask on this layer. Can I see it? Yes, I can actually see it. Good. So what a mask does is that when you create a mask for a layer, it will only display the area that's within the mask's shape. So here if I show, for example, well, this is pretty much the best keyframe I can show here. So right now I've got this mask that is this rectangle that is just black inside. And if I deselect inverted, you can see that this ripple diamond background, you can only really see it through this mask that I've set up. And if I invert it, it does the opposite effect, which means everything inside the mask you can't see anymore, and everything outside the mask is still visible. So the way that I've got it laid out is that I have this mask start out as just a black line, or just a line, which is why when it comes up, you at first only see kind of this black line right there. And then immediately I have it open up to cover the entire screen. And I have it done in 2 frames. So you can see it just gradually opens up, and then eventually it takes the whole screen. And what you see right now, this black that you can see right now, is just, it's gonna turn into whatever is below this composition in the next in the master timeline. So if we look at it in the master timeline, you can see it opens back up, and I already have the next composition set up below it, and that's how you can do it. Kind of neat way to do a little transition there. That's how I've got it set up. And then for the logo, I've also got very basic animation. Just have it swerving to the left like that. Done in 2 frames. Just get this guy out of here. Some motion blur, of course. And then yeah, it's just pretty simple stuff. And then for the text, it's also I haven't mentioned this, but it also exists. It also exits the same direction that the mask would open. So yeah, so the mask opens from the center into the edges of the screen. So I wanted to have the text leave in that same direction. So that's how I've got it achieved. If it's in the upper half, it goes up. If it's in the lower half, it goes down. That's how you've got your transition done. Alright, let's see. I'm 45 minutes in, and we've only gone through the intro, so I'm gonna have to speed up a bit. Luckily, you'll see throughout this that the more we get into this video, the more I recycle stuff. Because again, I like to save time. The more I recycle stuff, so I'm not gonna have to go into so much detail as I go along the video. Anyway, this is where we see Greg, and I'm gonna fit this to 100%. There we go. This is where we see Greg, and this is one of the simpler slides that I've got set up. I turn this, yeah, and then full so we can see this in better resolution. Yeah, there you go. So what we have here is kind of like the GIFs we had at the start. I've got 2 instances of Greg just doing his little coat shuffle. I don't know what to call it. turn this up. There you go. So he does his thing. So I don't think I have any particular modifications applied to this. Oh yeah, I do have something called a time remap on it. Just if I didn't have this, what this time remap allows is you can control which frame of your animation you're onto. So right now I'm at frame 0. If I go to next keyframe, I'm at frame 13. So what this is gonna do is it's gonna go from 0 to 13 nicely, and then I want it kind of something like a loop effect. So I have another keyframe here that's set to 0. So what it does is it goes from 0 to 13 and then back to 0 and then back to 13. So it kind of has this this back and forth effect, kind of like a GIF that would go from start to finish and then finish from finish back to start. That's how you can do it. Since otherwise working with anything that's animated, so video, GIFs, stuff like that, it's kind of awkward to use. So time remapping there works quite a bit. It works quite well. And then that's pretty much it. I've got it on 60% opacity, just to not have it cover the whole screen basically. And then there's the let's save, get out of here. I've got the AOG logo. Swoops in, just, you know, organized by AOG because they won the last league. And then obviously VG, organizers of the VG League, makes sense. And then some text that doesn't really do much. Does it? Yeah, it does pulse with the music, because I remember for this video I've got everything pulsating, got in music. So, you know, that's pretty standard stuff. And then this is a botched attempt at some 3D. Kind of interesting. I've got this whole 3D layer setup going with cameras and lights and everything like that. And you can't really tell, because if I close this and then if I just told you that let's see. These layers, so these layers are the quarter circles. If I told you that these layers plus the huge VGLX text are just kind of sliding from right to left, then you wouldn't notice that this is 3D stuff, because it's just, I think I've got the VGLX text further away from the camera, which you can see here. Can I zoom in on it a bit? Yeah, there we go. If I go to the camera, yeah, this is where the camera is. And this would be where the, let's see, is this, yeah. Because these are 3D. So the pink line that you've got there would be where these quarter circles are. And the VGLX text is further back from the camera's point of view. So, but the problem is I've not set it further back enough that it makes a difference when you shift the camera. If, for example, I took this, the Z-axis, and then lowered it a bunch, and then there you'd be able to see that when I move the camera around, the VGLX text slides around faster than the quarter circles. But anyway, I wanted to make that text 3D. I couldn't really figure out how, and then I just ended up just making this hugely complicated background that I really didn't need to. These could have all just been 2D stuff that I have sliding at different speeds. So I don't know why I didn't just go with that. I wanted to challenge myself with 3D. Sometimes it pans out, sometimes it doesn't. And here it definitely didn't. So that's pretty much it for this slide. How does it fade out? I think it just moves out the way. Yeah, it just moves out the way. It just take the whole composition. I've got some position stuff going. It just, yeah, it drops down, and then the next one shows up. It's basically the same thing for this one, except it doesn't have the Gregs, so it's inferior. put it to full. Yeah, this is where we moved to SciTube, so we weren't using Twitch, Hitbox, or Smashcast anymore. I think we were using YouTube back in the day. Kind of like the end of VGL 14, actually. So yeah, again, this is just pulsating. This background, it's kind of the same, except the text is vertical instead of horizontal, but otherwise, same thing. And then some meme arrows. These are just, you know, just from the color that an implication would look like, and then yeah, it's pretty standard stuff. The logos, I've got some drop shadows on. You can see here, 50%, just because if I turn it off, it looks kind of dull. I tend to have drop shadows on whatever I have onto a background, just so it's easier to see, easier on the eyes. It's just how I do it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this slide. There's not too much to say about it. This, I'm not even going to get into the slide because it's just the same thing. Just there's 12 groups of 4 teams and there are 4 matches each. So whatever, it's just explaining the format. Now this is a bit interesting though. This is the format locked slide, and I've got it set up. The way I've got it set up is kind of interesting. There's a lot that goes on. The first thing is obviously you can see on frame 0 that there's some weird stuff going on. So I still have the diamond background that I used a bit earlier. I used the same one here. It just works well. So again, reuse, just reusing stuff to save time. And if I go into, yeah, there we go. So this teams layer starts out, if I go to, yeah, there we go. We go to, if I go to my scale keyframes, yeah, it's also really huge and then drops down to 100%. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong. This is not the right slide. This is why I was confused. Yeah, if I look at the scale here, here's 100%, so it's regular size. And here's at 100. It's at 1000%, so it covers the whole screen basically. What this does is that, and I've got it set up, I bet. Oh, actually no, this looks linear. Interesting. Yeah, it's actually linear. Wow, I thought this was exponential, but it isn't. So it just starts out huge, and then immediately in a couple of frames gets to normal size, which looks very dynamic. And then I've got the 48 text, does the same thing. Starts out huge, bam. And then the team's text has something else, which is kind of neat, is I kind of mess with the kerning. The kerning meaning, for those who don't know, the kerning is the space between each letter. So this is how you do it. You can, when you're into a text layer, you can animate and you can put range. Hang on, yeah, range selector. I should be able to see it. Oh yeah, no, it's in tracking. So you click tracking and then you get this stuff, and you can see tracking type. This doesn't really matter. It doesn't need to be animated. But the one that matters is tracking amount. Starts at 0, so no kerning, and then gradually you can see the letters space themselves out from each other. So I use this effect a lot in this video. I probably even use it too much, but that's how I do it. It's just, there's some animation presets when you work with text, and they can be useful. Now then, what else do I have that's interesting on this slide? There's obviously the logos going in. So I've got every single logo of every team. I probably could have pre-composed this and put this in a different composition just to make it less cluttered, but yeah. If I look at the positional keyframes, you'll see I I've got them set up so it's 4x12. So at first we get the I think these were the pot 4 teams that showed up first, and then we've got the pot 3 teams that show up, pot 2 teams, pot 1 teams, and it's the same animation again, just positional changes, but offset in time, and obviously the last keyframe is different. And these are all odd values. What I did to this, because all these logos have different shapes and sizes, so they're not on the same line, so to speak. So it's kind of annoying to line them up. So what I did was I lined them up at first without any kind of how could I say? I lined them up without any regard for without necessarily caring about pot 1, pot 2, etc. I just wanted them kind of how you see them, like in this frame. And then once I had them, at a proper scale, proper positions and everything, this is where I started to mess around with keyframes to make it so these would come in last and these would come in first. So you have to think about what the end result is going to look like, and then you animate. Because if you start animating before you've got the end result complete, you're just gonna trip over your own stuff, and it's gonna be a lot more difficult to work with. So this is why I recommend just always start with the start with the end, and then you animate it when you've got your how you want your final image to look like. Other than that, from a lot of text pulses with the music, standard stuff. Let's see. Does it have any interesting transition? Don't think so. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same mask stuff that I used in VGL Splash earlier. There's just a mask in the middle. It opens and then shows everything out the way. Here, more of the same. Some text, same background, whatever. Here, more of the same. Doesn't really change. It's just the color and the layout that change, but the way I've got this animated is just the exact same. So no need to go into depth here. And then this is the second occurrence of the rippling effect. And then, yeah, get hyped for today's matches. So I guess I can go into it. It's kind of the same. It's mostly similar to stuff that I've already used, but there's some cool stuff. And there's also the this composition is kind of interesting, so I'll go into detail. But this is just pretty much the same effect. Let me fit to 100%. Full, so it looks proper. Yeah, there we go. And again, you've got this this hexagon effect, ripples towards the outside. Looks nice. But nothing you haven't seen before. What you haven't seen before, though, is the today's matches effect. Because I've got a bunch of keyframes for position when it comes to them. Or do I? No, actually, now I remember. I do have. So never mind. I thought I did this using only one keyframe and then messing with the values in the graph editor, but no. You can do that, or you can use multiple keyframes. I usually recommend using as many keyframes as possible because it makes it easier. The way I've got this laid out is you can see them right now. They're off screen, but you can see them. I've got the two text layers off the screen, and I want them to slide in fast from different from opposite sides. So that's what I do here. You can see X position, very far in the negatives, very far in the positives, and then here they kind of get they're not quite in the center yet, but they've definitely gone on screen. And once I've got that, I can set. I basically want to slow them down, just because I only want them to go fast to get on screen. And once they're on screen, I have them set to just slowly shift to the right and the left. And during that time where I've got them kind of sliding like this, I also apply the you should be able to see if I go into effects. Actually, yeah, you can see it right now. The slide sweep, you can see it also. And it's also animated. The center is animated. Here, for example, it's at 141x. If I take it after, it's at 648. So I want it to fast entry, then slow slide inside of the screen, and then fast fade out. And then during that time, I have that that light sweep just to make it a little shiny, kind of interesting that way. And then for the color, it's pretty easy stuff. I just have gradient ramp. What this does is it just you set a start color and end color. You position them however you want them to, and it makes a gradient. So that's pretty simple stuff. And then again, double drop shadow just to make it stand out a little bit more. Yeah. So then to go into the next slide, it's the same effect as we've seen in the beginning. Just again, multiple of the same slide. Here it's a little bit interesting though, but just because I've got it set to slow down when it changes. So if I can kind of show, for example, one of each. Yeah, if I take this, so again, this is I've got them set up. So this starts here, then accelerates, and then here reaches a point where the new slide is coming in, and I want everything to slow down. And slows down. If I show it in real time, you'll be able to see it better, I think. Yeah. I could have done it a bit smoother if I knew what I was doing, but again, this was pretty early stuff when I just started working with After Effects, so I didn't know my way around everything yet. But it still achieves a pretty good effect. I like it. So it fades into this slide, which I'll talk about in greater detail. We'll get out of the graph editor and pre-match slide. So this has a bunch of stuff just occurring at once. You see, it's a pretty short slide, so I think I can render it all in one go. It's gonna struggle a bit, but it's fine. All right. If I play it from the moment that it's on screen. Yeah, there we go. So this is where it's on screen. This is all the stuff that happens while it's on screen. Go. So there's a lot to take in. The first thing, talk about the background first, because that's I'll just move in from background to foreground. This is just a solid, so it's just a gray background. If I turn it off, it becomes black. Nothing weird here. This is just a VGLX logo. Again, if I turn it off, there you go. It's just if I turn it off, this screen suddenly looks very dull. So I just have it on again. I have it pretty big to cover as much space as possible. These are different. The arrows I'll talk about a bit later. Let's see. These oops. I think these are the So these two shape layer 1 and 2. Actually, I should probably put it there. I've got this set up kind of poorly. They should be around here, but it doesn't really matter. Again, stuff that you don't really notice once you watch the video. But now that I look at it, I'm like, wow, I was very sloppy when I did this. But again, these two are the quarter circles, and they just do their thing. Again, they're just there's a bunch of repeaters going, and then they have their usual little rotation. They do their own thing. Now, what else do we got? This I'll talk about later. Yeah, I've got this layer right here. This is kind of interesting. This is another instance of a repeater. It's a pretty interesting one. I gotta say, I got pretty creative there. So I'm using a bunch of stuff here. The first thing I'm using is I've got a shape that uses a repeater, so if I turn it off, you can see it's a single stroke. So what I've essentially got is just a single stroke that goes in a diagonal direction. And you can see also that it briefly cuts off here, and that's because I've got a mask going. Again, the mask makes it so I've got clean edges. So if I turn it off, for example, let's see, can I turn this off? Oh, wait, no, I can disable it. Well, I can just delete it. Yeah, if I delete the mask, you can see that you can see the entire stroke. But I wanted this to cut on a vertical axis, so that's why I put a mask on, and then now it looks proper. And then if I turn the repeater on, bam, and now it looks like just a stripe pattern. So that's one way you can achieve kind of a stripe thing like this. Is you make a single stroke, use a repeater to cover the whole screen, and then use a mask to cut it cleanly on the sides. And then also I think I've got it moving, but there isn't much to it again. I think it's just moving downwards. Yeah, well, it's moving upwards, but the direction doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's slowly moving upwards, you can see. Yeah. But nothing much to it again. If you've got enough copies of the repeater, you won't run out, so you're fine there. Again, just to give some more animation, just to make the screen a bit more dynamic. It's moving up. And then I've got VGLX here. Just, it doesn't do anything, it's just kind of there, but it looks nice. Then I've got this text with today's date. Well, today's date. It's not really today's date. It's like 2 years ago, but it was the match day's date. And then I've got it swooping in, kind of like today's matches earlier. Yeah, it swoops in, then goes slowly, and then swoops back out. And again, if I look into the keyframes, the positional keyframes, I can see 2 quick keyframes to get it inside, and then the 2 next keyframes. So these 2, just slow drag to the right, and then it fades back out quickly to the right. It's a cool effect that I don't use nearly as often as I should. Honestly, I did it really well on this video. That's how you can achieve it. Works pretty well there. Alright, the last thing this screen has going on that I would like to talk about is, let's see, is it this? No, it's 6 and 7, yeah. This is some pretty interesting stuff. I've never really recreated it. I've animated some repeaters on this occasion. So I'll open both layers up. So this one I don't think is doing much. If I put it into view, yeah, this one is just here to make the first arrow with a blue fill. If I knew what I was doing, I wouldn't even need this this layer, honestly. But it's just here so that the repeater effect, you've got the first arrow is filled in, and then the other ones aren't. But yeah, this first one doesn't do too much. It just swoops down from the top of the screen, and then it just stops when it reaches the first line. You can see there. But this one is more interesting because it's got that repeater, and I've got a transformation on the repeater that makes it so. So I've got 8 copies of this on this repeater, and what I've got this set up is I've animated the position of the repeater. What that means is you've got this end result right there, where each arrow points at each match or at each line. So the final position is 108.5, but it starts at 0, and you can see that the if I go into this, it's a line, so it's gonna gradually increase. So if I play the footage bit by bit, all the arrows just kind of start condensed, and then they spread outwards like this, and it looks really nice, I think. If I play it in real time on the video, it looks like this. It's really quick, so I'll play it at 25%. this. That's an effect I really liked. And then this text is all one layer. Not too much to say about it. It is kind of interesting the way I've got it set up, though. I made it more... I could have used more layers and made it easier on myself, but I wanted to keep it all in one layer for some reason. So what I had to do to achieve the effect of, you know, each line displaying, you know, one at a time gradually, like this. So I had to do a few things with the animator. What I did is I go to animate and then I go to opacity, and then it gives me a range selector. Now, what the range selector does is that it allows you to select a number of characters, or here it's lines that I've got set up. So I've got to start at right now start is at 0 and is at 8. If I move it forward, you can see at the end when everything shows up, the start is at 8. And the opacity is at 0. So that means that whenever I've got this selector covering the screen, nothing will show up. But as I move the start of the selector progressively to the right, the lines start showing up like this. So that's how I do that. Is this still editable text, actually? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Now I had it set up so I could, you know, change this text with whatever the day's matches were, and then I wouldn't have to redo the entire animation. Just saves me more time. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that slide. And then we move on to the match previews. Now, these are kind of interesting. There you go. Match day slide. So I've got it divided. I have a big slide where I regroup every match in the day. Yeah, there we go. For example, there's this one. If I go backwards, there's this one. So I've got all of them laid out progressively in one big composition, just because that way it's less cluttered. So if you go into the first match, and this is something that it'll show up in the team reel later on as well, is I do one thing. I have one template that I apply every time, so that whenever I'm done with the first template, I just apply it with different colors, different teams, different footage, and it saves a ton of time rather than redoing it all from scratch every time. Is that actually it? So there's quite a few things that are going on in this first one. I mean, it's going to be the same for every match, but you know. So here we've got logos. They don't move; they're just here. You know, I've got the name of the general, logo of the general. This is not going to move. And then I've got a color code. So here, for example, Meg is in dark blue, SKG is in kind of salmon color, which I go off the wiki to look at team colors, and I take whatever is you know, suitable. So that's how I do that. So you know, this is pretty standard stuff. What do I have? So I've got, oh, these are interesting actually. These are just a bunch of solids that at first you'd think wouldn't really do much, but they kind of have. Yeah, there's a. Let's see, the fill is pretty interesting because that's where I give them the color. I could instead of just applying a fill effect, I could just create the solid with the proper color. But this is faster. If you take the fill, you just paste it in, you fill it with the color you want, and then whatever solid you've got will have the proper color. But yeah, if I turn them off, you can see it becomes black. And obviously I've got two of them because one of them's for the top team and one of them's for the bottom team. Now, this is interesting. This is something that will come up a lot in this video. Is what I did was I wanted to have kind of this VGLX text moving around in the background. So you can see if I gradually go frame by frame. Actually, I'll show you in real time. This is going to be easier to see. You see how the VGLX text, this line is moving from left to right, this one from right to left. Gives kind of a nice effect. You'll see it even more during the team reel, but this is something that kind of helps the background look less empty. It's a good way to do it. And the way I did it is kind of interesting because this originally was a text layer. So I just, I made a text layer just kind of like this, and then I typed VGLX. Here it's not showing up because it's below the for example, there you go. I typed VGLX. Woo, congratulations. But so that's what I did with the proper font, proper color, and everything. And what I did with this is I wanted to have kind of a repeater effect. But you can't have repeaters on text layers. You can only use repeaters on shape layers. Luckily, there's an option. This is a text layer I've got, for example. If I right click, I can go and click create shapes from text, and it will create a shape layer of the text I've selected. So for example, right now, this VS text layer, it's become it's become invisible. It's been replaced by this, which looks, somewhat the same. It's not 100% on this occasion, but here it does it's gonna do the trick for what I want to do. I go back a bit. There you go. So that's what I did. I just typed VGLX and then converted that layer to a shape layer. And since it's a shape layer, I can now use repeaters. And I use two of them specifically. One of them is to have the VGLX text repeat along the line. So for example, if I turn the copies to like 3, you don't even see it anymore. Let's see, 7. No, 7 also doesn't show it. If I put 9, if I put 9, you can see that it shows up once, it shows up twice, and then there's nothing. So again, this is kind of a repeater effect just to have that one instance of VGLX show up throughout the whole line. And then the second repeater, much like I used for the quarter circles, to have it, let me see, does it show it? It kind of shows it. To have it vertically. So the way I've done this, I wanted to have one line go from left to right and one line go from right to left. So what I did here is that I wanted only 5 copies of this specific one. And then instead of going just one line up, I went 2 lines up so that I could have, in one layer, I could have 5 lines going from left to right. And then in the second layer, I would have 5 lines going from right to left. So for example, if I turn this layer off, you can see there's only a few. You can hardly see the ones that are here, but you can see this one and you can see this one. They're both moving at the same speed in the same direction. There's a lot to render there, so the computer is kind of like having a fit, but you can kind of see it. And I drag my cursor a bit. That's how you do it. And then for the second one, it's the same thing, except it goes from left to right. Or it goes from right to left. So again, if I play it slowly, well, here it's just kind of rendering, so I'll just, there we go. You can see it just slowly moving from right to left. And when you have both, turn both on, and then each line is moving in a different direction. It looks really nice that way. And you've got the VS text and the hour. They're also pulsating to the beat of the music, but they're alternating. So there's not too much to them. And the last thing I want to show is how I've got the transition from one match to the next set up, and it's kind of similar to what I had before. It's still using masks. So you can see there's a pink line across the screen here that outlines my mask that I've got set up. And what I've got is I've got this the current shape is, this is the shape of my mask, but I've got something called mask expansion set on a few keyframes. So here I've got the mask expansion at 0 pixels. So it's basically just a line right now. But in my second keyframe, I've got it set to 800 pixels. So what that causes is that, for example, if I turn off this and then change the value, you can see gradually expands. That's how you do it. And then I've got this set up for every match. So again, the only different stuff is obviously the logos, the colors, which, there's always going to be, this is always team dependent, so the logo is different, the name of the team is different, the colors I'm using are different, the footage is different, but other than that, it's pretty simple. I will go over the footage though, because it's not so simple. So I've got some footage here, some footage there, and it was a bit of a challenge to make it to kind of make it fit into that black outline you can see here and there. So what the way I've got it set up is I've got just the regular footage, and you'll be able to see if I delete the mask, because I've got a mask applied to it just so it stays in that outline. If I delete the mask, suddenly it looks terrible. So the way I've got it set up is that I've set up a mask just so it would stay in that quadrant of the screen and look proper. And it's the same with the other one. You'll see there's also a mask here. And again, if I delete it, yeah. And then the black outlines are just some shape layers. Pretty standard stuff. They're just outlines. Just you take something I can show you actually. You can turn on a grid, then you make your path, kind of like you take the pen tool, and then I just do whatever, just put this one here, put this one here, etc., etc. Here it's not snapping to the grid, but well, it is kind of snapping to the grid, but. And there you go. And then you remove the fill because nobody wants a fill on this. And there you go. You've got your outline. And then you can position it properly on the grid. So yeah, pretty simple stuff. And then you can get rid of the grid when you're done using it. So that's how I've got this whole frame set up. And so what I would do when for example, let's say I just finished doing this and I'm all done. What I would do is first off close every single layer, and then Control A Control A to select everything, copy, open then whatever new thing I'm working on, because there would be nothing here, then paste, and then all I have to do is change the colors, change the logos, change the footage, and nothing else has to move. So that's a good way to save time like this, is you go from scratch once, and then with that template that you've created, you just apply it every time. And that's also what I do for the team reel. I I make a bunch of templates from scratch and then I apply it continuously, just so it makes it quicker to get through. So yeah, done with that, and so let's. So let this play every match. Again, using the same technique every time. Here, there's kind of something interesting with I'm going to talk about it now. You'll see it later also with the team reel is for FGOG and FGO Alter. I decided to get a bit cheeky, and since FGOG is for JP and FGO Alter is for NA, I made a Japanese and American flag for both. So it's pretty simple stuff. It's just this is just white, and then I've got a shaped layer somewhere. Yeah, there it is. Or it's just red circle, and then I've got the green solid over all of it, so the circle doesn't override like that. So yeah, just pretty simple stuff for FGOG. And then for FGO Alter, I did the same thing but with an American flag, so it took a little bit more effort, but yeah, it's the same thing. So the way I did it was red solid first off. So when you see the red stripes, it's actually just a solid. Then a bunch of white stripes. Well, it's actually just one stripe that I've got a repeater on. You can see there's one here. It's got a bunch of copies spaced evenly to look like the flag. And then shape 4 is the blue upper left corner. And then shape layer 5 is a star, which I've got some repeaters for. And I'll talk about the star pattern when we can actually get a proper look at it. Or actually, no, I'll do it right now. Just we turn this off. Yeah, there we go. Now you can see a little better. If I turn this off and then this, and then maybe even this. Yeah, there we go. Now you can see it clearly. What I've got going for this flag is you'd think I just use an image of the American flag, but I want it to be annoying, so I just made it from scratch. So yeah, I've got this star right here. Making stars in After Effects is super simple. There's a star tool, so you just go off that. And then, so yeah, I've got my my star shape. So I have first repeater. See, it's got 6 copies, so these are the 6 stars on the horizontal like this. And I've got a second repeater, 5 stars, so like this. So 6 times 50 is 30, and then I've got another shape layer, also with a star, also with some repeaters. 5 on the horizontal, 4 on the vertical. 5 times 4 is 20, 30 plus 20 is 50. And that's how you do it. So yeah, I didn't really need to bother with doing this, but I thought it would be kind of fun. And then obviously, yeah, fragments of 2030 because, you know, fake grand order joke. Alright, now this is probably the most technical part of the video, just because it uses a bunch of 3D. So I'll show you in real time what it does. Right. Look at it again, but with in times 0.25. So arrow shoots up, then you got this text which changes. Arrow comes down, bunch of arrows get hype. Alright, so let's get through that. first off, the background, same as always. You've got a and this is, you know, this is just the background. So if I turn it off, you know, it's just a light gray. Kind of looks like the VGL logo. If I turn it off, it becomes dark purple. These are just a bunch of lines, just again to make the background less dull. So they're in 3D. They are in 3D, and again, you want some stuff in 3D in your background to indicate whenever you're doing camera movements. And I've also got, as always, the quarter circles doing their own rotation thing. Yeah, they're also in 3D. They also move around when I move around the camera. I've got this purple solid just to make it less ugh. And that doesn't look too great, but if I turn it on, oh, suddenly there's a lot more color. Yeah, it's just low opacity solid all over the layer. Looks nice. So what's next? Is this the arrow? Oh, this is the arrow. This is just, yeah, one of the quarter circles. Oh, this is the arrow. Yeah, there we go. So the first thing you see is this arrow, but as a when this gets on screen from this frame on. So the moment you see this arrow, the camera is already moving. And what the camera does is that it precisely tracks the arrow moving up. So it makes it look like the camera is just on the arrow. But at one point, precisely here, I have the arrow moving out the way, so I stop tracking it, and instead I focus on the VGLX text. So this is done with some rotation, some orientation, and then changing the point of interest and position. It's pretty complicated to work with cameras. What you want to remember is whenever you want to move the camera around, you have to change the position and the point of interest at the same time. So it's best done through looking at this kind of outline. Let's see, can I? Yeah, I can move it. So this is my camera right there. And if I wanted to move it, I just select it and then pick the axis that I want to move it in. That's how you do it. But yeah, cameras are pretty tough. Everything that's 3D, pretty difficult to work with. You need to be kind of accustomed with the software before you get into tackling 3D. But yeah, I've got the camera moving up, following the arrow. Because if we look at the position of the arrow, it's also moving up. There you go. And the arrow keeps moving up, the camera stops tracking it. It rotates a little bit, you can see. Yeah, quick rotation. And then it's going to slide to the right to show the VGLX text. And then I've got a bit of a transformation on the text, which is pretty interesting. I've never used this effect again, because I've never really had the opportunity to. Is these three layers, they have the same effect applied to them. So they have a drop shadow, which is whatever. But what you can do is source text is just whatever text you've got set up, but you can animate it in a way that you can change what font your text is and have it remain in the same layer, and you can even animate that. So for example, here I've set up a bunch of keyframes where at every keyframe I select a different font. If I go through them, actually, I'll just go keyframe by keyframe, it's easier. So this is first keyframe, and then every time I move forward one frame, it changes the font. That's a really cool effect. And it changes super quickly in real time, so you can't really see all the fonts, but you can tell it's changing extremely quickly, and that's what I was going for here, along with the camera movement, the slow camera movement to the right. That's kind of something neat that I've not used again. And then the camera does another move where I open it up. It's going to zoom in a bit on this arrow coming up. There you go. Now it zooms in on it. And it's going to track it moving down. So the camera moves down at the same time as the arrow into the get hype text. And when the camera gets the get hype text in the center of the screen, it stops. And the arrow keeps going. And then you've got a bunch of arrows going to and from the screen just to add a little bit of color. And then the get hype screen, again, same kind of animation that I had for the VGLX text. Except instead of having it change fonts, I have it change color instead. And something kind of interesting, and you wouldn't notice unless I pointed it out, is that I also have the drop shadow adapt to the color. You know, it kind of matches it, but what I forgot to do is I forgot to have it change frame by frame. So for example, here I'm between two frames. But it's still yellow. It hasn't started changing into blue. However, I forgot to do that for the drop shadow. So now the shadow color is kind of like this weird gray between yellow and blue. So that's something I forgot to do. Is if we go into this, yeah, you can see the colors go kind of all over the place. And what I should have done is this, and then it would have looked proper. But yeah, no one would have noticed that, not even myself. So doesn't really matter. You'd never see it in real time. And then the last thing that's going on in this slide is when I've got the camera moved to the get hype text, there's also the VGLX logo in the background. But that's pretty much it. And then all these layers are just the different arrows that move into the screen. Yeah. And here I could have done some pre-compositions to save myself the gigantic fucking layer amount of layers, but I did it this way, so whatever, it works. They're all different shapes, different colors, different positions, so you know, it looks pretty nice. I could have used some repeaters if I wanted to add more, but just one of each right there just looked pretty good, so I just went for that. So then we move on to, wait, hang on, what's the transition here actually? I forget. Is there even a transition? Might not be. I might just completely... Yeah, there's... Oh, yeah, no, there's a very quick... It just flies off the screen. Whatever. Alright, and now we move on to the actual team reel. So this is the meat of the video, right? This is the part that people assume takes me the longest, when it actually takes me usually the shortest amount of time. Because it's just like the match preview I showed you before. I go with a few templates. So, for example, there's this one. There's this one. There's this one. And there's this one. And I basically take these 4 templates and just reapply them throughout all 48 teams. It saves me a bunch of time to do it this way. So if I go into AOG, I've got some text. Well, a bunch of text, actually. Just text all over the goddamn screen here. So you've got the logo. The logo's not moving. It's just here to indicate that, you know, it's Ace Attorney Online. There's the AOG text. And I like to detail what every team is, just so everyone has a good idea of what they are. If they've won a VGLX, I show that as well. And I've got this choose your team text just because the theme of the video is kind of like video game-ish. And then every team's got its own color. Just a bit of footage, and then down here, I've got some stats displaying. So it's kind of like a select, you know, kind of like a selection menu kind of thing. Looks pretty nice. Everybody really liked that. So yeah, the way I've got this set up for the text is again range selector, offset to 0, and I've got, so at the start it's 0 to 100%, so you can't see anything because the opacity is to 0. Yeah, the opacity is 0. But as I move the start further and further on, you can start, it kind of displays the text like that. So that's how you do it. Other than that, you've got the background, AOG. This background is the same thing that I had before. It's just every line moves in different directions. You can see, for example, this line moves from left to right, this one from right to left. Yeah, it's the same thing as before, except I made it extra annoying on myself because I had to redo this effect every time with the name of the team. But, you know, it was fun to do, so whatever. And then you still have AOG plus choose your team pulsating with the music. And then Sif4XG is just the same thing, except the layout is different, but otherwise it's the exact same. Monster Girl Game General, again, same thing. The stats are displayed in different positions. I've got 2 logos instead of 1. And then Roguelike General, I've got the logo here. I've got two videos showing at the same time, but it's the same. It's the same thing basically. Nothing too complicated there. So this is really actually a really good example of, you could make something simple, but that people will really like. If your theme is strong, if the music matches well, and you've got a strong concept, then even if it's simple, it'll work. So then yeah, you've got some footage, but the footage doesn't really matter what it shows, as long as it's, you know, goals being scored, celebrations, stuff like that. That's what you want. And the way I guess I could talk about that because I haven't yet. I have some folders where I have just a bunch of footage for every team. And the way I would do it is I just bring some footage. It's from UTG, so you know whatever. We'll take some from AOG, for example. I take some from AOG, bam, and I've got some footage here. So the first thing I want to do is lower the scale. So I'll put like 60, for example. Yeah, that's good. Then put it to the appropriate side of the screen. And then I want a specific moment, because if I just show players shitting around in the midfield, nobody's going to care. So these clips that I have are all either goals, goal celebrations, stuff like that. So I just move it forward. And hello, Greg. How are you doing? And then bam. Video just plays itself. You just got to select the right moment. And then also effect controls. I would like to add a drop shadow to that. So I go into my effects. Drop shadow. Bam. Put it on the video. And now you've got a drop shadow. That's how I do it. And nowadays, when I bring footage in, I try to mess with the time remapping, just to make some action shots look, you know, more dramatic, using speed ups and slowdown. But that's only because I've only recently been given 60 FPS footage. With 30 FPS footage, I wouldn't be able to do that kind of thing. It would just not look good. But yeah, that's how you do it. And yeah, the last thing you might have noticed are on these 2 layers, I've also got the same kind of kerning change I've already described earlier. So if I go into text, you can see there's an animator, range selector, and then tracking amount. Goes from 0 to 3. Yeah, just it's there. So then we can look at the entire team reel at regular speed, and I'll stop if there's something particularly interesting that happens. So this one in particular, I've got some more music syncing with the music. Here the music is kind of unique. It has a unique rhythm to it compared to the usual loop you hear for every team. So I kind of wanted to bring the elements like the logo, the footage. Yeah, I bring them in gradually to match with the music. Yeah, works kind of well like that. Here, I actually have some footage of the game because you people will remember that for VGL14, I asked every team to send me some footage of their games. But originally, I did ask to do that for VGLX back in the day. But only 2Hug sent me something, so I ended up saying fuck it. So that's why I was so annoying with VGL14 and just continuously asking everyone, send me your webms. That's why. Just because I only received something from 2Hug. Same here. Just again syncing with the music. Nothing too fancy. Elephants. I can show that off. Let's get rid of that, and then Dom G. All I have for Dom G is just I left in the music because some of the footage that I have still has the audio with it. So I think originally what happened is I forgot to turn it off, and I pre-rendered and then played it to make sure everything was okay. Then I heard the elephants. I was like, huh. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna leave that in because that's funny. And there you go. Here, this isn't one of those days, but I did a little bit of a meme with Group F teams just because they both had 0-0 games. So what I did was I switched the music to something really mellow and quiet, and then I had the footage. The footage was basically slowed down to match the lower BPM of the music that I replaced it with. And then instead of choose your team, I had implying Group F. And instead of PlayStation Vita General, I had some meme shit. Like, I think this was On a Holds General because their goalkeeper On a Hold saved everything. This was just implying Vert because obviously Vert misses every single fucking shot. This was 90 minutes in the hyperbolic time chamber. And this was just Sleep Tight Aniki because we were all sleeping watching ALG play. Oh, and also I've got this little effect here. Kind of like old television kind of messed up signal thing. There's not really any reason for it to be there. It's just to match with the music because it's kind of a unique passage in the music, and I wanted to kind of emphasize it, so that's why it's there. Now this. Now obviously this isn't worth really stopping over because this is just some text on a black background. But that sample, I didn't add that in. That's originally in the song that I used for this, and it just so happened that I was like, wait, hang on, I can totally just put based on here, and everyone will say based in the chat, and it will be really funny. So it just happened to match up that way. It was really lucky. Oh, something kind of interesting here. I didn't want to go from just the black text back to the footage, so I'll show you. Yeah, there it is. There we go. So, and here you can see everything is super bright, and it's destroying your eyes. That's because I've got an effect on this, I believe. Or it might be... No, it's not on... It's not... It's either... Okay, it's on here. Because, yeah, all this isn't seen because it's the based screen. And then I've got this adjustment layer here with a bunch of fucking. I took this from a tutorial, on a YouTube tutorial, with a bunch of different values, and this is something that I use quite a bit just to have a flashy transition. What this does is that it turns up the exposure to like something ridiculous to make it really fucking bright, and then adds a bunch of blur to it and a bunch of glow. And it's all controlled. So you see these numbers in red. They're all controlled by one thing, which is a slider. So sliders are kind of interesting. I'll show you. Because I've got all these effects animated because they're fading. You can see here they're at max and they're slowly fading out. And I'm controlling every single one of them using only one animation. The thing is, this slider here is turned up to 100, so this slider is pretty much turned up to max. Like, for example, like when I have this slider at 100, every single value here is turned up to maximum. And then I have it gradually go down to 0, well 0.10, where every single value is turned up to minimum. So that's one way that you can do to avoid having every single effect be animated and have its own keyframes, and it just becomes really heavy and awkward to manipulate. You can just have a bit of an expression. Let me see actually if I can show the expression to show up. Because you can work with expressions. Let's see, is it this? Yes. Well, hang on. There you go. Wonder if I can. Yeah, there we go. So this is just effect, slider control, slider divided by 50. So all that does is this just tells me the value of this is going to be determined by the value of the slider divided by 50. So that's all that says. And the other expressions here is this is just equal to the slider. And exposure master, there we go. And this is equal to slider divided by 40. So that's how you can make just a bunch of changes rely on one slider. It prevents you from making a bunch of different keyframes and then have it being really annoying to manipulate. This is just one way to do it. It's simpler, and it makes it so whenever you do a change to the slider, the changes occur to every single effect you've set it to. So it's really useful. Some optimization there. Anyway. Alright, so it's almost over, and good thing because I'm almost out of time. The last thing I want to talk about is the outro, because that shit took me a long time to get done, and it's I think I did really well with it. So I used the camera here, more 3D shit that probably didn't need to be 3D, but I again wanted to challenge myself. So I started really right now. You can see, all you can see is just this pink triangle and then this purple background. I'm actually just super zoomed in on the VGLX logo, and what I wanted was to have a very, very quick rotation camera. I wanted to have the camera rotate really, really quick, so you can see as I change from frame to frame, the camera rotates a bunch. As I zoom out, I'm zooming out, and you can see when I'm doing the rotation, these little dark, lines, they're actually the quarter circles. So that's a little bit of motion blur right there. looks really good, but obviously you don't really notice it in play. And then finally, it zooms out like this. Camera keeps zooming out, and then this took me a fucking. I just figuring out how to do this was a fucking God. It took me so long just to have all 48 logos of the VG League, not only just in a circle, but facing outward like this. That was a challenge. I had to figure out how to do this, and it's all. The rotation and orientation is all just out of very specific. I had to do it one by one, and I think what I did was I aligned it on a shape layer. I don't think I have enough time to show that might be something I have to save for next time, but yeah, because this you don't see, you really don't see it, because I don't think I have a filler stroke on it. Yeah. There you. There's a path, but there's no stroke or fill. All right, so I can go over it a little bit. I remember precisely what I've done. So I've got this shape layer right there. This is just a circle. If I show the stroke, it should show up. Yeah, there you go. This is just a circle. So, nothing fancy here. But what I use this for is that I use this circle to determine where I should put every logo, and how I should, you can, in After Effects, you can align things with shapes, and that's what I did here. Because I also have these two. Let's see, what do we got here? We got some more. Some more circles. I don't think I ended up using those, but they're not showing up, so they're fine being there. Yeah, these I don't know why I have this here. I don't use them. There's the VG League logo. The VG League logo actually doesn't move. It's just a camera that does all the work. And then as it gradually zooms out, you can see the text VGLX start. I kind of want to see something with the camera, actually, the position. Yes, so that's something interesting also to point out here, is that I've got the speed of the camera is, I wanted to zoom out to be inversely exponential, I guess would be the term. Start out really quick, and then as it zooms out, slower and slower and slower, until we get the entire text into the frame, and then it could fade to black. So that's how I wanted it to, because it's more dynamic when you've got an effect like this than if it were just linear. Then it wouldn't be as dynamic. It wouldn't have as much impact. So that's how I did it. And again, I could modify this just like the thing, and then again mess with the handles. And yeah, also something else I had is I had all these logos aligned on this shape layer, and I also, I believe, had it move. Because all of these are like slowly moving. Yeah, you can see there's keyframes all around. They're slowly turning clockwise. It's hard to see just because of all the turn them off. Layer controls. Yeah, if I turn them off, you'll be able to see better. They're slow. Yeah, they're slowly rotating. So that was a nice effect. That's something I probably should do again, just because it's been so long I've even forgotten how I do it. But yeah, it's just, there's a way to align images or even other types of layers, so like text, stuff like that. There's a way to align it with shapes. So here I just drew a circle around the logo and I had the logo of each team. So all 48 teams just spin around like that. So if I show it again in slow-mo. Then there you go. If I play it in real time, it looks like this. And again, I have kind of a weird. I wouldn't do this regularly. I wouldn't have this effect, but the sound at the end kind of, kind of inspired me to have this this black fade out from the top, kind of like, a low effort game over screen. You'd have the screen fade to black, kind of like that, and then I have the traditional PAPE fade in. Alright, and that's 2 hours. I somehow managed to cram it in 2 hours. Obviously, there's some stuff that I could have detailed more for newcomers to After Effects, so I don't know just how useful this is going to be if you're a total newbie, but I encourage you to maybe use the video as a reference and then experiment stuff on your own. Just try some stuff out that I've done in this video just to get accustomed to After Effects in general. One thing I haven't really talked about is my overall layout. When you start After Effects, you'll probably see this screen, which is, it's somewhat similar. You've got your project here, you've got your timeline, the preview is there, but here there's all these sub-menus are really, just what the fuck is libraries? What the fuck is line? What the fuck is tracker? All this stuff that I don't really use, like audio. If you want to work with audio, it's there too. But what I use is I've got it personalized just a little bit. So audio's over there. I don't use it, but it's there if I want to. There's the preview screen, which I also don't use because I use the keyboard shortcut. So whenever I want to play, I just select something, press space, and it plays. Here I've got the character menu, just because I do a ton of text work with these videos, so it's good to always have it around. Color, font, alignment, size, kerning. That's borders, I believe. Oh yeah, strokes if I want some strokes. And then just various options. Effects and presets, this one is very useful. You'll use this a lot. Every time you want to add an effect, you either type what it's called in the search bar, or you know where it is and you look through the different menus. Paragraph, this is also useful for text. If I want my text to be centered, left aligned, right aligned, it's all there. If I want some indents, some stuff like that, it's also there. And then align, this is also very useful. Here everything is grayed out, but if I select something in particular, let's see. Go to match day. Match 5. Let's say let's look at the HSG logo. Let's say I want to put it in the center vertically or horizontally. Bam, there it is. If I want it on the center of the screen, bam, there it is. If I want it touching the left side of the screen, bam, there you go. That's something you can do, which can be pretty useful, just to move stuff around, or more specifically to put it in the center. The align menu is pretty useful. I use it a lot, just because bumbling around to find the right spot can be just annoying. So I just say screw it, just bam. If I want to center it, if I want it to center horizontally, I just click it once and then I drag it to wherever I want. So that's something kind of interesting you can use. Aside from project, I also have effect controls. You'll need to have your effect controls somewhere, just because if You'll also be able to access them here, but since effects usually have a bunch of menus, doing it from the timeline is usually kind of cumbersome. So having a sub-menu do it here is usually pretty useful. Instead of, since usually when you're setting up your effects, you're not using stuff from you're not looking for stuff in your project. This is better to use the effect controls, and then obviously project is where everything you're using is your footage, your compositions, your music, all this stuff, your logos. It's all there. You have to import all of it, but once you import it, it's all there, and you could just you click drag. You can click it, drag it, put it into the screen, add it to the composition. You can you just click and drag it. And if you want to create a new composition, you can click this button and do some fancy stuff with it. This I can cover maybe another time. But yeah, that was a lot of talking. My throat is very sore, so I think I'm gonna end it here. Thank you guys for watching. Tomorrow I'm supposed to do more of this. Let me know if you want me to go over a specific hype video. I wanted to go over VGLX today just because it's just because VGLX was something that's actually somewhat simple, and it's a hype video a lot of people liked, so I figured it would be a good entry point. But if there's any other hype video that I've made in the past that you guys on After Effects that you guys would like me to cover, like VGL 12, 13 knockouts, or even 14 that I've completed not too long ago, I can do that also. I could also show you. Let's see. Do I still have the files? I should still have the files. I don't save, but I should still have the files for Summer 17. Yeah, I can also do Summer 17 and VGL 8, but VGL 8 doesn't really have much going for it. So, but anyway, if you want me to show some stuff, Summer 17 could be interesting because I've got some template stuff that I've bought and then used, and then obviously just VGLX, VGL 12 is the one where I based it off of a video that I really liked, and then 13 knockouts, 14 knockouts, Just, yeah. Feel free to get back to me if there's any one of them that you'd like to see. For now, this is going to be it for me. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for